Hi, I'm Bjorn Osby. I'm going to show you a fly I've been tying for quite a few years, and I've been having a lot of success on it. It's called a Retruder, and a Retruder means reverse intruder. And as you can see, it's basically tied like a Retruder. It's got two stations, some pretty big profile, and the main idea behind a reverse intruder is that you're tying it with everything swept forward towards the front of the fly. So this is a tube fly. You can see the hook here. Everything is swept forward towards the front of the fly. So as the current hits the fly, it's sweeping everything back, and that's what's giving it that profile right there. And the materials are just going to undulate a lot in the water, giving it a really lifelike appearance. So a little background on this fly. Like I said, I've been fishing it for quite a few years. A little after 2010, sometime in there is when I first started tying, the early variations of this. And I've tied several different types since then. I've tied them on big, huge shanks, weighted with dumbbell eyes, small shanks, unweighted, tubes with and without dumbbell eyes of different sizes. Some of them in almost all synthetic materials. Some of them all natural, bright, really muted for trout, some bass flies too. So anyways, a lot of different variations. After my friends realized I was catching a few fish on this fly, they asked me to show them how to tie it at one of the fly tying nights we were having. And after I got done, my buddy goes, "That is kind of like a Larimer's reverse marabou." And I had never seen Tom's fly at that time, and so he got one out of his box and showed me, and I was like, son of a gun, that is pretty similar. But there's a few differences in the two flies, and, which brings me to a point that I'd like to make, is that I don't necessarily consider this fly to be a pattern with a recipe that's set in stone. It's more of a design philosophy or design principle to me, of a fly that's tied in reverse with sparse materials and still maintaining a big profile so that it's easy to cast. And so that's kind of the idea of the Retruder. So go ahead, tie a few up and mess with it, mess with the materials, the colors, get it working for you however you want. And hopefully you get out there on the river with it and it helps you catch some fish. So have fun. Thanks for watching, and hopefully it'll help you have a good time on the river. So take a tube. I'm going to be using a pro tube in this case, and I trim it off so there's about a 1/4 inch or so off the back. And then I'll just trim the front a little bit. A lot of times I'll use a razor for that. But then you want to slide it on your mandrel and really get it on there good. Push it way in. You want that thing spinning it all. Usually I use a black one, but I'm going to use this pink so that it shows up a little bit better. And I don't know, I'll have a little more variation in my box, I guess. I'm just going to start this in the back third, which actually is going to be the front third of the fly. So this fly is tied in reverse, hence the name Reverse Intruder. And on a lot of them I'll use like a barred ostrich or rhea. This one I'm just going to use some of this barred voodoo fiber. I'm just going to split that on my thread, give it a soft turn. I'm just going to kind of spread those fibers out around the top of the tube. I'm going to flip it upside down, and I'll tie in a few on the bottom side. 4 or 5 on each side is plenty. This one might be even a little overdressed here. One, do soft turns, move it around. So what I want to get those kind of spread all over the shank. I'm going to take these, I'm going to pull them back front. I'm just going to wrap forward on them just a little bit. Okay. Adjust them so that they're kind of spread out evenly. Okay. Next up, I'm going to tie in a black marabou feather by the tip. So I've gone through and just kind of pre-selected some of these. If you're hoping for a quick, 2-minute video with cool effects and music and stuff, this is definitely not going to be the one. But I'll give you some reasoning for some of my material selections and maybe a tip or two that you can use. So I'll tie this in, pulling those fibers back as I go. Constantly kind of wetting that and pulling it back. And then I like to, on a marabou especially, because it's so fragile, I wrap back over the top of it a few times, because I just don't trust that stem. So that's there. Everything is kind of flowing back that way, and that's on purpose. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a dubbing loop with some Arctic fox, then the black angel hair, followed by UV black ice dub. And I like to get this Arctic fox on these zonker strips. Just makes it a little more manageable for me anyways when I'm putting them in the dubbing loops. I can pull them off. I can, run my comb through them if I want. If they're on these zonker strips, I can, mess around with them, and I don't cut that leather off till the very end. That hide. So I'm just going to set this on my tying desk here, and I'm going to just kind of lay out how my dubbing loop will be, and I'll show you that in just a second here. Kind of what that'll look like. Clipping off now some black angel hair. This is going to give it a little shimmer to the underbody. And so when I do this, I want to cut this so it's just a little longer than these Arctic fox fibers. So I'm going to cut it so it's a little bit longer. And the reason is because it's going to be folded across the dubbing loop, whereas the Arctic fox is just going to kind of hang out to one side. So I've got that angel hair sitting down there. Might do just a tad bit more. The effect this has under the marabou and the Arctic fox is pretty cool. Doesn't take a lot though, so don't go too crazy with it. And then finally just some UV black ice dub. Pulling these out and kind of separating them, stacking them, and getting all to kind of lay the same way, evening out the length. I'm going to set that down, and I'll show you here what that looks like on my table. So you can see right there, I've got everything kind of laid out, and I've got some Loon tweezer pliers. I think they're called D-loop pliers, but I'll use those to grab that and put it in my dubbing loop. So I'll make a dubbing loop here. Grab my dubbing loop tool, and I really love these new Loon tools. This one, it's awesome. It sits on the table without rolling away. You can use this shepherd's hook. It's got the gator clip for whatever the fly fish food guys do. The complex twist stuff. So anyways, I'll take this. Oh, so here's the other tool by Loon that I've really been digging. It's like a tweezer almost, really long. It's called the D-loop tool or something. Anyways, it's really cool. Makes it easy to manage these materials. So I'll grab those off to the side, stick them in that dubbing loop, pinch the dubbing loop down, and then just release and carefully remove that tool. I'll adjust my Arctic Fox to the length I want, and then I just simply trim it right off of that zonker strip there. Making sure I'm not cutting my thread. Pull that out of there. So it's all good to go. Ready to give it a spin. As soon as I feel it starting to twist in my hand, I kind of let it go. Give it another spin. You know, the more times you can twist that up and spin it, the tighter that's going to be, the more durable it's going to be. And then I'll take my bobbkin and just untrap some of those fibers. I'm just going through and I'm picking them out. Seems like the Arctic Fox and the ice dub is pretty easy to free, but those longer angel hair fibers like to get trapped down on themselves, and they can be a little bit stubborn. So it does pay though to take the time to pull these out. You're going to get a fly that the fibers undulate and move around underwater a lot more. So it's, you know, take your time and make it nice since you put this much effort in. Then I just take this toothbrush, which broke on me in my last fly, so I've got a little mini toothbrush now. I'll move this one to my travel tying kit. Okay, pull that up, and I just stroke everything back, pinching it over the thread. Pulling it backwards, which is to the front of the fly. So get those wraps nice and tight on each other. Not on top of each other, but just tight right next to each other. Pulling everything back as you go. Okay. And tie off the dubbing loop. I'm paranoid, so I kind of pull everything back and give it a second tie. Might not be necessary, but makes me feel better. Once again, going through, picking everything out, making sure nothing's trapped. And then one thing I've been doing the last couple of seasons is I've added just a little piece of Schlappen there to just be one more prop. It doesn't, you know, soak up a ton of water. It doesn't make the fly much heavier, but it does seem to make a difference in keeping that profile a little bigger. So tie that in by the tip also. grab it by the pliers, pinch those backing up. Just kind of start getting them moving that way. And as I wrap, pulling everything back. So you want everything pushing forward, because remember, this is the front of the fly. You want everything really propping it up that way, and that's where the big profile is going to come from. Then next up, I tie in some holographic tinsel, black holographic tinsel. Now obviously you can, mix these colors up to whatever you want. I just am in love with black and blue, black and purple. So it's kind of my confidence color, me and everybody else. I'm just going to work this all the way back. And more or less covering up that shank. Or tube in this case. Originally I tied all of these on a shank, and then kind of got into tube flies, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and sure made this a lot easier. Okay, so I just hitch that there. Lay down a little bit of super glue. This is just going to help that tinsel for durability and to kind of hold it in place as well as I'm tying it on. So start that, and I'm using my rotary function of the mongoose is what I'm tying on. I'm just working that all the way to the back. Originally I tied this with black ice dub for the body, but I've kind of gotten away from that just because there's so much more fiber in there to keep the fly from sinking, and this smooth body that's created with the tinsel isn't going to trap water. It's also not going to trap the fibers of the fly, whereas the ice dub with the rib and stuff, it would just, some of these fibers would get caught in there. So then I just use like an old junk feather to, if there's any of that super glue that leaked out, get rid of that. Another thing I've been doing to just kind of smooth that out even more is putting some UV resin over the mylar, and it makes it a little smoother. Once again, I don't see that trapping the all the materials nearly as much since I've been doing that. Makes it a little nicer. I'll just kind of spread that out with my bobkin. Okay. And then I'll hit it with the infinity light. Seems like this infinity light really helps that resin dry a lot more tack free than some of the other lights I've used in the past. Pretty impressed with it so far, and it's super convenient since it's rechargeable, and even when it's plugged into the charger, you can use it, so you're never going to be low on batteries. So for the back station, it's pretty much the exact same as the front. Smaller proportions as far as length, a little less material, and it's just kind of a mini version of the front half of the fly. So same thing here, just kind of some soft turns to spread these around, get them kind of where I want. Like I say, not too worried if they're kind of all over the place right now. I'll fix that once I give it a couple wraps forward to really cinch it down. They can be a little crazy and wonky right now, that's fine. Don't want to trap them though, like that. Okay, I'm going to pull that tight, move those forward, and I'm going to give them a few wraps forward like that. If they're a little bit crazy, that's fine, because I'm going to go back and I'm going to trim those anyways. So those are all forward. One of my favorite little tools I use, if I can find it here on my desk, one of my favorite and cheapest tools, and I learned this from watching some of those Kelly Gallup videos, is just a straw here with a slit cut in it. And I'll slide that over these materials here to keep them back. And I'll keep it out of the way as I'm tying in some other stuff. So again, marabou tied in by the tip. Going really sparse on this back one here. Kind of wet it to make that marabou a little more manageable. And I grab all this stuff with my hackle pliers just because I'm such a klutz. I drop everything, and if it's tied in with the hackle pliers, at least the weight of the hackle pliers will hold it, you know. So going around, this is just going to be a couple, 1 or 2 turns with this one. It's really sparse, like I say in the back here. I go back right up along the bottom edge of that marabou to reinforce that stem. Okay, so there's that. Grab my straw. All that stuff's put away. Now, the next step will be another dubbing loop. Same materials on the front, except this time I'm going to be using white angel hair and white, or pearl angel hair and pearl ice dub. Really small section of Arctic fox here. You'll see that's a pretty tiny little clump. Kind of light on the, pretty light on the angel hair even. So take that, and I'm going to just, I'll trim that so it's a little longer than the Arctic fox. Not a ton longer, but a little bit longer. Because remember, that angel hair is going to be split right in the dubbing loop, and so it'll get folded in half. Whereas the Arctic fox is going to be sitting in the dubbing loop, you know, like this. Pearl ice dub. I got a little too sparse on that. I'll grab a little more. Pulling out and stacking it. So one thing about these dubbings is depending on the batch you get, they might be a little bit different. So, I mean, consider that as every time you're using them, as far as how much you're grabbing, how long the fibers are, and, you know, what texture they are. So I'm just grabbing all that in my, my Loon tool here. I'm gonna make my dubbing loop. Stick all that stuff in the dubbing loop now. Pinch it down tight. Release it. Get my Arctic Fox how I want. I want that just to go up to about the front station. It's not very long because that's just going to hang kind of right off the back. All it has to do is cover that back junction tube, essentially. So it's not real long. I'm just going to spread these fibers out. Get them sitting just how I want. Give it a spin. As soon as it starts twisting like that, I slowly release it. Another spin. Starting to twist. You know, like I say, this is pretty strong thread, so I feel all right about giving it quite a few twists like that. Taking my bodkin, just pulling everything out. Getting everything so that nothing's trapped. Some of this stuff comes out, that's fine. I mean, if it comes out now, it's probably going to come out eventually anyway, so get all that out. Give it a good brushing. Top and bottom. Sides. Okay. And then just pulling it back. Pulling back and pinching right on that thread. And then wrap it. As you can see, each material, because I tied it in smaller proportions, there's only a couple wraps. If you get back here and there's a little bit of gap between the junction tube and the main, you know, body tubing there, you can always go back over that with just a little bit more iced up, which I will do here. So that's just kind of, it's just a little filler. I'm not even going to worry about putting it into a dubbing loop. Just going to put it right on the thread. Wrap over that just a little bit. Then I'll give that whip finish. And I'll just do it by hand here. Maybe a second one to be on the safe side. Pull tight. Make sure nothing's bound down. Pull that off too. That straw. Looks like everything's kind of free. I give that a haircut that way, or I mean a brushing, not a haircut. Get everything flowing. Now, if you think about this, this is actually, I'm combing it back or brushing it back towards the front of the fly. So this is the back, this is where the hook's gonna hang out. So then what I'll do now is I'm just gonna pull that stuff back. So watch how this just pops out as soon as I let go. So it just wants to hold that position. So I'll do that. And I'll do the same thing on the front. Just grab that stuff and start pulling it back. It just wants to wants to keep that same position, so it'll pop out. It'll do the same thing in the water. You know, it'll pencil down a little bit, but it's gonna pop out every chance it gets. So I'll pull that back. Some of these materials that are hanging way out the back, I'll start giving those a little trim. And I don't trim it straight. I give them some kind of slightly uneven trims here. I don't want it to just kind of end in a straight line. I want it to come back and be a little bit tapered there, like that. So that is the Retruder. As you can see, pretty good size profile, not a ton of materials, easy to cast, and I have had a lot of success with this over the last several years. So the last thing, I pull that out, switch it in the tube, and I'll either usually trim this off with a razor, and take a lighter, melt the end of that tube, get it kind of mushroom out a little bit. Careful not to get your materials. Then I switch it real quick. Kind of spin it on the mandrel to spread out the opening to make it easy to get the leader in there. So there you go. Kind of a sort of a messy looking fly, but man, in the water it really holds its profile. Like I said, really easy to cast. Just a super effective fly. There's the back of it. I think that, you know, bright hot spot in the back really gives them something to aim at as they're coming by and getting angry and giving it a bite. So, Retruder, tie some up, use them, slay some fish.